Evening, guys. Thanks for joining us. This is our mic week, like we're just carrying on with now. And tonight's going to be interesting. I'm not going to waste too much of your time. We are also announcing it is 8 o'clock, so Johan is busy checking the results of our competition for the MV55. And he's running that off with Walt just to make sure that we give the prize to the right person. In other words, auditing. We do things right. And then I'm joined tonight by three very esteemed gentlemen that I'm aspiring to. I'm going to bring them onto screen now. We've got Adriaan van der Walt, Marius Marais, and Sir General Auspicious Peter Pearlson. I think it's great to have you guys with me tonight. I think it's been, these kind of chats, we often have them in silos. I know I've spoken to all three of you in different scenarios. We sort of get onto subjects and we find out what we're passionate about. And it's always nice having them, but I think this is a first for me, having so many brains in one spot where the opportunity for insight is almost endless, and obviously grooming tips. So we'll start it from there. I think just from an opening statement point of view, I'm going to look at the screen and start with Marius if he just wants to say hi to people, and then we'll get Adriaan and then Peter just to greet the guys and say hello.
Goeienaand almal.
Goeienaand.
Hope you guys are doing well. It's going to be a fun chat, man.
Hi all. Thanks for joining us, and let's hope we can all learn from each other's opinions.
Oh, good evening. It's quite an honor to be here with everybody. It's very cool. I was quite chuffed to get the call. So it can only be fun with present company.
Definitely. I'm hoping. I made a comment when I shared the post that I'm just going to be sitting quietly in the corner taking notes, listening to you guys talk. I shared some questions with you guys when we were off air on some of the thoughts I have for the discussion. We're going to encourage everybody to start sending questions, comments, requests. Mario sings a bit. Adriaan plays guitar. We'll do something to entertain you, or we'll just talk. But don't be scared. Johan's monitoring the stream for us, so he'll pop through the questions as we go, so we make sure we don't miss anybody's question. If we do miss it or it just gets too complicated, we'll answer you off air on the chat later. But please share and comment with us. I wrote down some stuff. Obviously, we're talking microphones, and I think to kick it off, before we get into the microphone thing, the thing that from a sound engineering point of view, you maybe don't start out appreciating it as much as you should. And I think the longer we stay in the game, the more we appreciate it, and the more we start emphasizing it. And by it, I'm talking about the source. When we put a mic on something, what are we putting the mic on? A microphone is something that can really relay a message well, but that source is vitally important. And I think I'm going to start with Peter on this one. I'm just going to ask you, over the years, your experience, what value would you place on quality of source or knowledge of source?
Source is everything. Absolutely everything. If you have, and my interaction and my experience, certainly in the live arena, is probably very, very different to both you and Marius. I just arrive and I mix. So I don't get really much of a chance. I send tech writers in terms of what I would like. And what I get very rarely meet. But we get there, we get backstage an hour before we go on stage. So I get a chance to go outside, at least have a listen to the PA. I have a look around stage. If it's convenient, if I get a chance to, I will brief the monitor engineer on what the band wants, because I essentially really only travel with one band when I do live. I do occasional things around town. I'm really very easy and very open to doing favors, but in terms of the profession, I pretty much stick with Thandiswa Mazwai, so I tour with her. So I'm not involved in the rigging. I don't put the PA together. I don't tweak the PA. I don't have any control over the final output. We do send tech writers in terms of what is required by the band in terms of the instruments. more often than not, the guys will say, we generally want, in terms of the kit, because obviously the drum kit's a very important thing in festivals, especially if it's a generic setup and everyone is using the same backline, which happens quite often in South Africa. Not so much internationally. I've done big international shows where they've got 4, 5, 6 different drum kits and they change over with forklift trucks, and it's done exactly to rider. South Africa things are can be a little bit more limited. We have a Yamaha Oak or Yamaha Maple Custom generally on the Tech Rider. If you arrive at a gig and you have a kit that is a sort of Cash Crusaders bottom of the range Mapex, and nothing against Mapex because I know they make some good shells, but the bottom of the range stuff is really not pretty. And if the kit sounds like a bunch of cardboard boxes, the best microphones are going to relay that they sound like a bunch of cardboard boxes. So sorry, very long-winded.
No,
source to me is absolutely everything. If the source sounds killer, it becomes less important what you put on it, just with a little bit of know-how as where to put things, but it becomes less important. The mic choices become less important because your source is sounding great.
Yeah.
It can be very challenging. And it's not impossible to get a horrible sounding drum kit to sound okay. Again, with a little bit of technique and a little bit of experience, it can be done. And it's never going to sound great. It'll just sound better than it would have if you hadn't been there. But source, absolutely imperative, absolutely important. Source is everything.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Okay. Adriaan? Same question.
Yeah, I have to agree. Wise man once told me that you can't make chicken salad out of chicken poop. So it really is, it is the most important thing. And then obviously the best microphones that you can afford or the production company can afford to get the highest quality through to the PA. You know, there was a point where I didn't really make a fuss about microphones because in some part of my career, I thought I can fix everything with EQ without knowing all the bad things that too much EQ would introduce. But of lately, high quality microphones to capture the essence of the source, whatever it is, you know, so to make that interpretation true from the artist's vision through to the audience's ears.
Marius?
I'm just going to carry on where Adriaan stopped, or just maybe fill in some of my views. I mean, as Adriaan and Christo, you know, we could spend 2-3 days on a PA, fine-tuning it, getting it to the best of your ability and the venue allowance, and then a crappy microphone could really like end it for you right there. So, you know, it's all part of the big puzzle at the end of the day. But I mean, over the years, for me, running down and starting to sift through things, like finding a little niche that I like in my personal capacity and adding it in, it makes life easier knowing the microphones and learning microphones, learning what, you know, a microphone might be made for something that you're not using it for. I mean, I think we're all guilty of that. You try and play around with stuff and you find little things that work. And then again, you work in scenarios where it won't work in this, where it worked in the past, it won't work with that type of PA setup. It's just, it's a very a fickle situation, if I can call it that. But microphone choice, the source at the end of the day, if you've got a good PA setup and you've got a good microphone, you know, it's like coming back to what Adriaan said, coloring shouldn't be an issue. You know, you just clean stuff up and make it happen. Microphones is obviously, that's, you take all the other peripherals away, take the PA out of it, take the consoles, whatever, it's that source, that what you pick up, that's where it starts. That's where audio starts, is what you put into that little capsule.
Yeah. I think the thing that comes to mind is that I think, and I mean, Peter, you also mentioned you travel with a specific band, and you do get to know your band. I mean, if you stand behind a console and your band starts, or you're just doing a sound check or a quick check, you very quickly hear, you know, right or wrong. You know, is it something I'm doing or something I need to address on the other side? You know, it's your knowledge of the source, you know, that the kit shouldn't sound like that, the mic, the vocals shouldn't sound like that, based on experience. And then from and Adriaan also said it, good quality microphones, good quality sources. And I think what we've gotten used to, and I certainly, I'm not saying getting used to it, but we tend to work a lot with very skilled musicians, spoiled in a way. You work with guys, if you've got Rob Watson on a drum kit, I'm not going to go stand and watch him and ask him to tune the kit and, hope that he gets it right. He's at a rider. He's going to sit down there, and I know the minute he starts playing, as long as the techs have done their job right, in other words, putting the mics, the way that they know I like it, or the way Marius likes it, or the way they've learned to do it, you're going to get a good source.
Yeah.
And, but but I've been on the other side, if you work with up and coming bands or young bands where drumming, the guy he's either still learning or not experienced, he hasn't done a recording yet, all that tuning. And I made a comment the other day when I was with Marlon, the worst drummers or the worst tuners are sometimes young drummers where they do smiley faces, they tune as far as they can reach at the bottom of the hoops. And, the tuning doesn't last. It sounds horrible. And it can sound great acoustically, but it's dead on the mic. It's just dead skins. You've got 3 percussive hits with no tone to them, stuff like that. So, but we do sort of get spoiled in source sometimes. But then I think what Marius also said, that just by knowing the microphones, that's a key thing, knowing what you've got available to you. You made a good point, Peter, that you don't always get the choice, but I'm going to put you on the spot now. If you could get a choice, so you've got a rider you sent out. Obviously on your rider there is a channel list of some sort of what your choices of mics are. So what would in a live scenario, what would your choice of mics on your band setup be? It's a deep sigh.
You want me to run through the entire rider?
No, just quick. The obvious stuff. Kick, snare, hats.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what I don't want. And that is the El Cheapo plastic boxed PG drum kit set with a PG52 and a PG56 with really bad clamps and PG81s. That's what I don't want. PG81s are great on a stand if you want to hang your jacket somewhere. It's pretty cool, as long as it doesn't tip. I can't think of any other reason I'd want a PG81 anywhere near me. Not a big fan. That's what I don't want. But generally, the PA companies provide decent microphones. And if you've got something on a kick drum that you can make work, people have preferences. Some people like the Shure Beta 52. Some people like a D112. Some people like an Audex D6. They sound slightly different. And if you just have a squiz around and have a look and see what is where, you know what you need to do. I know what I need to do with a Beta 52. I know what I need to do with a D112. I know what I need to do with an SM91 that's sitting inside a kick drum, or with a D112, because they've got a characteristic, and you know what they're going to sound like before you've done anything to them, and what you need to do to them to get them to where you want them to be. One thing I would love around a kit is the KM84s, but they're quite scarce. Quite scarce. You don't find them often.
Who makes that one?
The Neumanns, small diaphragm Neumanns. 84s or 184s?
I don't know. It's your mic. There's so many model numbers. I get confused sometimes.
But I'm happy names. With like 57. I'm old school. 57 on snare drum's fine. 57 top and bottom is fine for me.
But
something on.
It comes back to your characteristic and understanding the microphone. You know what to expect from a 57, and you know what you're going to get when you use that combination.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I mean.
But, also, again, the in terms of presenting a band, the focal point of the band is obviously always going to be the singer, and again, please don't give me a really, really crap quality wireless microphone up front. As long as the wireless microphone is decent, I'll get her to sound decent, and that's going to be the focal point. And if she's cool and everybody's happy with what they're hearing and they can hear what she's saying, and it's microphones. There we go. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just checking out here. The KM184. That's the slightly newer one. That's a small diaphragm Neumann. Great for overheads. Great for hats.
Yes.
The generic here is normally it's like 81s. So 451s, which are cool, on the top and on the hats. It's certainly, I much prefer them to SM81s. I'm again not a big fan. Shoot me down here. I know a lot of people like 81s.
81's a acquired taste. My favorite use of an 81 is with the 10 dB pad on a top snare.
Okay, that's an interesting choice.
Killer. You will be pleasantly surprised.
I will give that
but
a go.
You've got to put it's got that little 10 dB pad on the capsule.
Yeah,
bring that down so you don't overload the preamp in the mic.
Yeah.
Beautiful. You get a really decent sound off that.
I will absolutely look at that.
And it's like the last place you expect to see an 81.
I still like to play around, not so much live because I don't have that opportunity, but I've been recording drums in studio for quite a while, and I still don't really have anything fixed. I still was like, what do I feel like today? Let's check this out. Let's check that out, So that's something I will absolutely look at. Thank you for that. And hopefully anybody listening can have a look at that. Is that flat? Do you do anything to it? Do you squash it, squeeze it with anything? Is it?
I tend to leave it quite minimal, if any, dynamic. And then on EQ, pretty much flat. Yeah, it really works well.
Just listening to the characteristics of the mic, that it would probably work. It would probably be more pleasing to my ear on a snare drum than on an overhead. So, yeah.
Adriaan. Yeah, it is Adriaan. I was getting confused there. In terms of your thoughts in that on the microphone side, obviously you're on the receiving end a lot, working with multimedia at the moment, but having worked with bands and in more corporate or setups where you do get to choose the microphones. Obviously there's a stock, but what is your general approach when it comes to that? Do you apply a lot of your own insight into those things, or do you follow prescription from what you get in?
Well, when dealing with a talent engineer, I'd give them what we have in stock, have a conversation regarding the alternatives we can supply to what they've requested. But for me, on the drums, the condensers that really changed my life a little bit was the Earthworks SR25s. I was always a bit skeptical of using very expensive microphones on live application, but after the first time, I was completely blown away. So that would always, for me, be a first choice for overheads, or if it's a fairly quiet setup, then I will just do the two overheads and the kick pad for the kick drum, and then obviously a very good quality capsule for vocals, because most of the stuff that I do, is vocal driven, whether it's a band or just voice with backtrack. Vocals is everything in these kind of mixes. So anything that's a very good
but I'm going to get you not to say anything. I want you to say what do you prefer?
Someone once someone once told me about KSM8, a bearded fellow in this in this group,
Marius.
And yes. So we then went ahead and purchased a handful of KSM8s, and I must say it's a great sounding mic if the microphone technique is fairly decent. But if you've got a inexperienced singer that doesn't really know about mic technique, it could be a bit problematic. But it has got a great sounding capsule.
Yeah,
the idea was,
hey, Marius?
the idea was The idea was that cool having a dynamic and a condenser in one cap. I mean, sorry to chip in there, but you're 100% right, and I've learned my lesson with that KSM. Certain vocals, I mean, I'm going to use example of an artist that I worked with quite a bit and still do is Tim Malloy, which you know well, Adriaan. And with his voice, I found the KSM8 he's probably the best microphone, the capsule I've used on his voice in the past. So it has got its place, but it's also, you're right, I've burned my fingers with that when it comes to mic technique and people not knowing the microphone and knowing that it's a dual.
Especially when they start cupping them.
Oh, yes. And it falls to pieces.
It's actually, on the broadcast side, when you listen, even before they cup, if your hand gets too close, you start hearing the artifacts of the sort of the shading that the mic has because of the backwards facing capsule, even before you get to the grill. You can start hearing that they're holding it close because it starts like a little 1K bubble starts building. No, it definitely has its pros and cons. I've also, I mean, that microphone, I bought the first one when it came out and I put it on Tiens Jordan, and he's either the mic's halfway down his throat or he's 10 inches away, depending on the song, how he's singing. But I can put that thing at a festival with a flat EQ if the PA's been tuned well, obviously, side note. PA tuned well, flat EQ, full on into the subs, no feedback, nothing. When he pulls in, the proximity effect goes crazy. It works like a bomb. And then I've put the same mic on a different person where they just nasally into the mic, no cupping or anything, and it just doesn't work. You know, it is very specific. And I think that's the lesson we learn as well. You can't fall in love with a mic in a situation and think, well, that's it. It's going to work everywhere. You know, so that'll bring me on to my next point, or my next question, which I mentioned to you guys earlier. You know, in your experience, I know. I mean, if I put it with Marius, or I haven't given Marius the opportunity to talk about Source yet. Stop me right there, Marius. You're not going to get away from this one. Your experience in terms of Source capturing. I mean, you do a lot of orchestral work. You do a lot of big shows with, 600 mics on a stage. You know, the importance of Source is extension, or what's the English word? Help me, Peter. What's the English word for exaggerated? There we go. It gets exaggerated because, when you're working with that many sources, you don't have time, number one, but you can't, you're going to get arthritis from EQing, if you're trying to fix everything on the console.
I think that's where the familiarizing yourself with product and playing around. I mean, taking back the years, like you said, we never used to close mic orchestras. When I started doing the orchestra stuff back in Stadionbank Arena, back in the day, and then moving on to the outdoor stage, we didn't close mic anything. We used AKG CK91s, was 453 preamps, 451 preamps. That was the norm, overheads. And you used to get a really nice sound. I mean, there was nothing wrong with it. And we used to do desks. I mean, 2 players on a line. And but as the thing progressed and we moved towards the digital age, the move towards more defined, more separation in the environment, I guess studio as well, because I mean, when I started using the 350 side on strings as clip-ons and the B6s, I think it was B6s, Countryman's, then it started giving you a little bit more gain. You could get more little cuts. So the whole orchestra rock and roll scene, the blend started working better. The proximity of the microphones towards the instrument, you didn't have so much bleed. You didn't have all the peripheral noise on stage running around, and it cleaned things up. And it's still, at the end of the day, I mean, my favorite kick drum mic is my best. I used a combination old school. I don't like a 52. I think it sucks, but it's got a place. It's brilliant on tuba, but on a kick drum, it's a D112 and a 91. That's my go-to. Sorry, and it's just when you work with it so much, your go-to button turning is so quick that you know exactly what you need to listen to. You get a clean sound quickly and you move on. But my favorite kick drum, and you guys will probably laugh at this, but it's an old Electro Voice RE20. So the best kick drum sounds I've ever had in my life is just that one microphone,
Yeah.
and it works. It works, and it's the same with the snare drum. I mean, you get so much. You get a 56, and you get 98, and some guys prefer top and bottom both dynamic or both condensers. It's all much of a much. My favorite snare drum microphone, just point and shoot, was Bayer 201. You don't get them anymore. I've been looking for one forever, and I just can't find one anywhere. And then hi-hat, same, narrow pickup pattern. I don't get too much spill. Mic positioning. So there's so much out there that you can use. But if it comes down to the largest scale of production, when you've got so many open lines running 200, 300 channels on a stage, yeah, then your mic choice, especially when you start doing strings and the lower strings, you've got to be, like Peter said earlier, he doesn't like 81 much, but I mean, that to me is still my probably stock. Looking at stock in South Africa is probably one of the first go-to mics for a double bass and a cello if I don't have an ATM. If you do a small string ensemble, it works, because not everybody carries a bunch of 414s in their bags, that works. You got to deal with, and 81s work.
Yeah.
I feel I need to just qualify that statement. Sorry, Marius, as I don't like SM81s as overheads. I think I should probably...
No, you can't change your mind now. You said it. It's done.
I'm allowed to justify it.
Peter, you're 100% correct. But if you go to a festival these days, or in the last 5 years, and what do you end up with on overheads?
SM81s.
81s or C1000s. That's
well, what a choice.
Exactly.
Hey.
Then I'd rather have SM81s, I must admit. Also, so C1000s, throw them into the same plastic packet as the PG81s. It's really, again, I'm talking about overheads and hi-hats here in terms of that top-end response.
So I happen to have this mic here, so I'm going to defend this. I'm going to defend this mic in one way. That very few people who own these mics, when they open the box, know what these things are when they get them. So when you buy this microphone, and I've kept mine, I've threatened my guys with death if they lose them. The microphone, you buy it like that. That's a standard cardioid mic, spill in all directions, great on vocals, but useless for anything else. You add in this little piece here, and it becomes a super cardioid mic, makes it a great podium mic or anything like that. You add this little piece of plastic, and you get a phenomenal 5K up high boost for overheads and hi-hats. But without this, it's rubbish for that purpose. And most C1000s out there, these things are lost, and you can't buy them separately. So how many of you have seen these?
I don't think I've ever heard a C1000 with that particular little piece of plastic attached.
My point exactly. So I tend to use them very sparsely, but I do use them. I use the Diana vocal for me speaking with the super cardioid. But it just goes to show you, and like Marius said earlier, you got to learn your mics. You got to understand what goes with them, filters. There was a question, what mic am I using? I think I'll put that to the team.
That's probably one of the best mics ever made.
And it sounds killer. It's a 441.
That's right. Early serial number. I checked it out on site. It's about a 74 to 75 model.
You have the 5-position bass roll-off at the bottom there.
Yep,
not?
do 5-position bass roll-off with an HF boost on the bottom.
So there you go, everybody. It's a Sennheiser MD441, Stevie Nicks' vocal mic of choice.
Yeah, I only have one.
Sounds great, by the way.
But
it also sounds pretty cool on hats.
It does, yeah. I heard Mr. Keith Farquharson's comment on that. Yeah. I just want to come back to Marius.
Don't lose that plastic mic clip, though.
No. Well, now these days with 3D printers, it's a bit easier. On Marius' side, just a quick one in terms of, if I had to ask you, if you had a choice without production, demanding certain outcomes of you, would you choose to be close mic'd or group mic'd or overhead mic'd on an orchestra?
If it's a classical approach, it'll be overhead. Let the orchestra do what it does. You don't want to color that. If you've got a good microphone and over it, it gives you what you need. It should sound natural. But if you approach it the rock and roll way, or you do a pops or something like that, the close miking helps. Otherwise, you lose a lot of the definition.
Yeah, but I think there's a misconception out there, and I want you to answer it, where we do close miking because it's better.
No, that is a complete misconception. No, the only reason we do close miking is when you take a large stage, being it in a venue or outside, you got a full drum kit that's not screened. You got backline on stage. You got choirs. You got to isolate. And when it goes that route, close miking just gives you the definition that you need, gives you the separation to actually build a proper mix. Where it's just a classical piece, and you got a string ensemble. You want to make it sound as natural as possible. And if you use a good, large, in my opinion, a large diaphragm microphone, and you just basically reinforce what's happening on stage without coloring it. That's the whole goal anyway, and what we do.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to classical music, you don't want to color it, because those guys trained to play the violin from 6 months. You don't want to go mess with what they do.
Yeah, 6 month pre-birth.
Exactly. So you don't want to. It's just the approach. But when it gets to the rock and roll stuff and the pops and especially like we do this Afro symphonic stuff in South Africa, you don't have a choice, because if you had to go over it miking, you would sit with a bit of a mush at the end of, in front of the console, instead of having something clean to work with. So, and then adding that onto the size format consoles that we use these days, you actually, the tools are endless to actually give a very, very good product to the audience. And then obviously working with you and in the past with Peter and the guys that track the shows that I do, when you close mic it in that environment, also gives them, more tools to work in the
separation,
studio.
Yeah.
Separation. So it helps, instead of having this mush of noise on stage. So we still have that.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw that comment. Revel is taking offense to the fact that you call it noise. He says, what noise? It's just sweet melodies from monitors.
Mr. Basalga will take offense to a lot of things I say, which is good.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we still got it today. I mean, when you got a harp, guys do different things on harp. I've got a set way that I've learned that works for me. Because when you do a classical number, it's fine. The harp sets, it usually cuts. You don't have to fiddle with it. But I've got to mark a harp high and a harp low, and it sits in the mix. You don't fiddle with it. But when you add the drums, you get a symphonic, Afro symphonic piece, and there's a lot of harp in it with the kit and djembes, and it's all going at the same time. If you have to pre-fade those harp mics, it's a mush. It's a hell of a noise. So that's why the close miking works.
So there's a comment here on your train of thought. There's a comment from Gavin. Surely, if you do start close miking, it means a lot of EQing in the reverb to get it to sound more natural.
Not really. No, I must be honest. It's when I look at the way I approach it with the ATM 350s, ATM 450s, and when the only thing you actually close mic in the orchestra is the strings. The rest is the same. Woodwinds is not close mic. The brass, depending on the type of show, but I like putting the clip on it, because it gives you that bite that you need. You don't have to run it hard onto the amp, the preamp. But if you use a good microphone, what I do in the Studio Vista is just I group the stuff. I EQ my whole strings, first 12 first violins once. I don't do them individually. I group them and EQ them once off and move on to the next section. And then I start cleaning up in rehearsals, time allowing. But no, it's not. I think from a live point of view, mic choice, close miking, it's more to do what afterwards when you start playing with your reverbs, it's coloring it and making it nice and warm. If you use the right capsule on a clip-on on a violin, there's lots of makes now. I think Shoop's just launched one now as well. That's a basically goes between two players, but it's classified as a close mic. It is, as long as it doesn't pierce and you don't have to color it. I walk into front of a console now, knowing a 350, knowing what it's going to sound like. And if you know your PA well enough, you'll actually go, before you even switch the channel on, you'll go pre-EQ your stuff before, and you know what the nasties are to take it out. And then
Yeah.
It worked.
But I think you highlighted something there which is key. I mean, the 350 in itself was, and I call it a game changer. I've got, that's the next question. From a game changer point of view, the 350, that range of mics, and you mentioned the 450 as well. The texture that comes out of that mic is already extremely natural, very sweet, very complementary to a lot of what would normally be harsh elements. So it does give you a lot of freedom, as opposed to someone that gets a whole bunch of 184 lapel mics thinking it'll work on strings. It's not designed for an instrument. It's a vocal mic. You're talking about the Shure, and I've seen guys do that, or they do omnis. They do different kind of omnis, and obviously your noise levels are still there, and then you still have to do a lot of cleanup. So the choice of mic is definitely important. Adriaan, you were talking earlier about vocal mics, and you mentioned the KSM8. But what would your, if budget didn't allow to go and buy a bunch of KSM8s, if you had to look at what's available now, what would be your general go-to vocal mic that it's not going to give you, it might not be the top of the range, but it's going to work?
Beta 87As, or then Beta 58s.
And why?
Because there's so many of them in our local market. It's kind of have to just, you don't have to worry about what you're going to, if you see that's going to be on stage, then you know what to do, as Peter says. You've got a library built in of what it should sound like. So you don't have to do too much to it. So Beta 87A or Beta 58.
Yeah. So I see a question here from Selby, which I think I asked in a little bit of a different way to Marius, which was the question about the close and the overhead mics on orchestra. Just looking at some comments and questions. Close miking, natural. We answered that one. Revel. Paul Smith asking what I just asked. What is your your get out of jail free card microphone that it's going to work anyway? I think, and that for me at the moment, and I own quite a few of them, is the ATM 450. I mean, I know Marius mentioned in an orchestra environment, but I've been using that for quite a while now on as not my main, but from a quantity perspective, generally all my surround mics and my audience mics, because they tend to not get harsh. They're quite small, easy to put up, side angle, condenser, medium size capsule. But it works on toms, it works on snare, it works on overheads, it works on hi-hat, it's a bit wide on hi-hat, but it works. But again, knowing what the microphone does helps you adjust to a certain scenario. So if I had, like I gave you guys the answer, if I gave you 10 of a certain mic, which one would you choose? None of you answered, which is not nice of you. If
it's a studio,
yeah.
For me, you can give me 10 TLM 149s, please.
Okay. Take a look. Say that in English, he says.
Neumann TLM 149s.
Those
studio recordings.
Yeah.
Some of us have got budget issues.
Christo didn't mention budget.
No, I said there was no budget. Adriaan, yours?
Well, it's,
if you opened your drawer, what would make you smile?
Earthworks.
1025s.
No, so the thing is, a good couple of years ago, I did a show for Marius in Cape Town, some Buddha Orkest competition. And it was the first time I worked with ATM 350s. So, and for me, that was a game changer. So if I get given like a carry case full of microphones, one model, one brand only, I'll have to pick ATM 350s, because for me, it's like a Swiss Army knife that I've never heard it on a kick drum, but I can't think of anything that it wouldn't work on except for maybe a kick drum.
Well, if you know the specs on it, it can handle 146 dB SPL. So
yeah.
I'd
stick it on a kick. It's not a big capsule, but yeah.
I've got a second Adriaan on that. It's like if there was a bag full of tricks, he already mentioned the 350s, which we can speak about days on end. the other thing is also the 87As.
I think that we'd also have to qualify a kind of, there'd have to be a split between large and small diaphragm. I wouldn't really be completely and totally happy with 10 of one, only having 10 large diaphragm or 10 small diaphragm mics. It would be nice.
Okay,
Krista,
okay, 5. Pick one.
and give us a
You can't say small diaphragm. You have to say model number.
ships MK6s.
Okay.
Ships MK21s, MK5s, they're all good. MK21's a fixed cardioid, so it means that you can't change the polar patterns. But
I know
MK5
Peter's trying to be subtle about it, but I think he's a Neumann fan.
No bias there.
No bias.
No, the
but
MKs are ships. So give me a few of the ships, MK5s or MK6s, and then some for my large diaphragms, the TLM 149s, and I will be happy as a pig in whatever a pig is happy in.
If I could chip in there, what he just mentioned there, I can't remember the model number. Peter, maybe you can enlighten me, but they had some ships. It almost looks like the old, same length as the CK91 ships when I was in Russia. And that was their go-to microphone. I mean, they had just bags full of these things, and I know they cost a fortune. I think I priced them, and they were like 27 grand a pop.
Yeah, it's about that.
When I got back, I mean, these guys literally had 40 in a flight case. They just, Joe, there's some microphones for the orchestra. You know, there was no clip-ons because it was with the youth choir and the Moscow Philharmonic Orchestra, and so they just do overheads on everything. But that also was it was a game changer. It's just something I don't believe we can afford here. Throwing bags of 30 grand microphones at a gig, you know.
Yeah.
But the 350 and the 450 is literally changed the way I mixed orchestras and bands for that. I mean, I've stuck, Krista, you were there, man. We stuck 350s on anything. I still use a 350 for a harp low. I used it on a squash box, on a concertina, on a accordion, on toms, on percussion, on any type of thing. It just works. So I agree with Adriaan there. It's definitely a complete everything microphone. And I'm sure if you mount it somewhere properly, you can use it for vocals and a kick drum or whatever else. There's a way of using it.
Peter, there's an accusation for you. A question for you. Didn't you win a SAMA recording an album with an SM58 only?
No. It's close, actually. I won a SAMA for an album using mostly SM57s. I used 57s on virtually everything.
Okay.
Wow.
I don't think I'm even going to mention the album, but we used the 57s really, really successfully. I didn't use them on vocal, and I didn't use them on kick.
Okay.
And there's a nylon string guitar somewhere down the line that I used. I didn't use a 57 on the nylon string guitar either, but wherever I could, it was just like I wanted to use 57s as often as possible on virtually everything, just to prove a point to a couple of people.
So there's a question here from Mapat, I think. He's asking a very valid question, which I think we sort of started out with, talking about the source. How difficult is it to get away with the wrong microphone in the right position on a good source? So you don't have your favorite mic, but it's a good source. How difficult is it to get away with it?
Well, that could destroy it, man. Sorry, I was just going to say, I mean, if you got a source there and you don't have, like Peter says, somebody brings you a PG56 piece of plastic, and you got a finely tuned Buschendorfer 9-foot concert grand. I mean, I think you're in a losing battle there. It's fixable. It's doable, not fixable. It's doable.
Yeah,
but
you'll get sound.
Yeah, you're gonna have a couple of issues mentally in the gig.
I think Marius will remember this. We were me and him used to do a gig called Idols, and we were sitting I think we were an hour and 15 minutes pre-show live, and the guest artist was what's his name? Almost said John Lennon.
John Legend.
John Legend. There we go. Sorry. He was coming in. We had a track. We were briefed he's going to come and sit and play, mime, but sing live. So we got Gorksy brought us a nice C3 piano. It was great. And he walked in. We got to meet him. He sat down. He played. And he's like, "Oh, it's not 100% in tune." And we're like, "Oh, it doesn't matter, because it's the track." He goes, "No, I've changed my mind. I'm playing." And I think we scratched in the boxes backstage because Shure was a sponsor. And the only mics we had was 2 Beta 98s. Tom mics with the drum bracket, and that's all we had literally left with us, and we made it work. And
that scenario is also now. Not everybody is a 98 fan. I mean, I am in some instances, and sometimes I'm not. But it also depends on what you're going to use. I mean, it's difficult to say you're in a situation where you got a source that's magnificent all by itself. Now you got a really crappy microphone. It's difficult unless you know what that microphone is. Because 90% of the time, if you've got a Beta 58 or a 57 in your box, Beta 57, Beta 58, you can get away with it. You can. So to come back to Mapat's question, yeah, you can fix it, and as long as you don't really have a bunch of shops at Crusaders microphones. Like you get,
those pink karaoke mics with the wide-in cables.
Those ones.
I think the important thing is if the capsule can handle the dynamic range and doesn't distort, then you can get away trying to fix it. But if that capsule can't handle a loud source, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. And it comes down to your knowledge of the whole situation. If say, for example, you have a mic and it's the only mic you have left on the floor, Tom, and you see that it's a dynamic mic, proximity is going to help you, and if it's, working, having a listen to it, see what that's the whole thing about it. Listening to it, see what it does, and try and find that best compromise position. Because if you just put it there and you get to the desk, the EQ is only going to do so much. You need to try and get as much out of it at the source as possible. But having said that, like Marius says, if the only mic you got left is a 58, a 58 can work almost everywhere, but you have to use your knowledge of what a 58 does and what its strengths are on what you put it on. If you gave me a 58 and a grand piano, I'm going to have to scratch my head and I'm going to try and find a hole to stick it in, to try and get in there. I've actually done it before where I've taken the grill off, gone underneath and shoved it underneath in the soundboard between the wood so it wedges in completely. So it's right there, so I get all the vibrations I can, and a couple of different things. But it's not just, put it there, we go to the desk and fix it. There has to be a combination of understanding the source, understanding how the mic works, and those kind of things. I see you guys all reading questions. Any questions someone wants to grab onto?
I think the SE microphone has come up a couple of times, and I think it's worth addressing just in terms of not just SE microphones, but there are many, many manufacturers who make a sort of what one would call a budget range, where they say this microphone sounds like a Neumann U87, but it only costs you 6,000 Rand. Right? No. It doesn't sound anything like a U87. And I think to a large degree, you get what you pay for. But there are some quite good microphones which aren't going to cost you an arm and a leg. And I think some of the SE microphones actually sound quite good, but the finishing, because they are cheap, the finishes are really quite shoddy. And the hardware, the cradles and the clips and stuff are cheap and nasty, and they tend to break. Even some of the low budget AKG stuff, which comes out of a far more reputable company, is actually quite cheap and nasty. And the fittings are really important, because if you're suspending a microphone and it falls out and lands on its nose, the chances are you're going to damage it quite badly. So it's really got nothing to do with the sound of the microphone, but the fittings are really, really important. But they also use substandard components. They use cheap and cheerful capacitors and resistors and stuff in the circuit boards of the microphones, because really, really good components cost a lot of money. So they try and keep the prices down. And it makes a difference. So when you plug it in initially, it might actually sound quite good, but 6-8 months down the line, it's not going to sound so good. So I don't know. That's just to train. I had access to, I see somebody's mentioned the Mic Tech microphones.
Yeah, it's
One of the
Mr. Lamour.
sounds I've ever got was using a set of small diaphragm Mic Tech C5s. I think they are absolutely brilliant and really, really good value for money. When I win some money, I will look at purchasing a matched pair of C5s actually, because I really, really like those mics. They're cool. I prefer them to microphones that cost twice the price. So I don't want to contradict myself. I don't know what your thoughts are on that kind of train of thought, everyone, in terms of getting what you pay for, and the mics not having, they don't have legs. The Sennheiser that you're talking into probably sounds as good now as the day you bought it, and will continue to sound absolutely awesome for as long as you will use it for, unless you run over it or something unfortunate.
No, please don't.
But not so much with some of the cheaper, could you say, the kind of Chinese mics?
Well, it's componentry. I mean, if you think about manufacturing, obviously when they try and reduce costs, they've got to reduce it somewhere. The look is something they'll try and maintain, and they start compromising on components and all that kind of stuff. So if you buy a low-end microphone that, you know, is modeled after an 87 or even a 58 or something like that, but it only costs you a tenth of the price, within a year, some of the capacitors and those kind of things are going to start running. It's going to be, you know, dry joints. There's going to be so many things because of either manufacturing or components that they've used that do age quicker. You know, the quality of the high-end components and the high-end gear is why you pay for it. And I think that, I mean, not just microphones, that's across all gear. And your statement, you get what you pay for. And you are sometimes surprised. I've come across some mics that have been cheap that have worked, you know, but, you know, it's not, it's a fluke more than a standard. There's a question here from Glenn talking about crowd mics. Obviously, I mic up crowds a lot, doing a lot of live recordings. So quick answer is yes to all. I use large diaphragm, small diaphragm condensers. I use rifle mics, short ones and long ones. It all depends on where I am. Like when we do stadium gigs, obviously quantity is king. You got to get to as many or as close to crowd as possible. You want some ambient microphones. I do MS pairs, I do stereo pairs, close and around the front of the stage to try and get real imaging. And then as I move back, I'm trying to do as many rifles as possible. Obviously, a short and a long mic will give you distance. Long microphones, when you can't get close to a crowd, works well. But you've got to plan from an imaging point of view. If you think about it, if you're giving someone who's doing post bunch of mics, you've got to have some system in how you've placed them, so you've got even pairs across your listening field. And they've got to be able, again, to handle the SPL, handle the frequency range being thrown at them. And a crowd that spontaneously starts screaming or bursting into applause, you know, with the wrong microphones, can sound like a bunch of cheese graters on a chalkboard. So that's where the 450 just comes in. I remember one of the first times I did, I think it was Zahara's DVD that we did just after her first album. I did it for Richard Mitchell at Carnival City. And I went and I put up, I think it was 12 450s with an MS pair of 414s in the front, and I didn't use anything else, no rifles. Carnival's quite contained, so I just went on the perimeter at the bottom, around the top, and he was sitting in post, and he never asked me on site what we were using. He heard they were sounding great, and then he went to post, lined them up, and he started mixing, and then he still asked me questions like, I remember, I think he sent me a message asking just what microphone was I using, because he normally on the crowd mic, you had to go and do X, Y, Z to try and get rid of that harshness of applause and stuff, and he just didn't have to. You know, it just worked. It was nice. It was flat. But being a standard condenser and not being a rifle, you've got to get closer and you've got to do more. Otherwise, you limit your experience. So I hope that answers that question.
I'm going to chip in there. Just saw it mentioned by Revel there. That's actually a very valid point. I think, Peter, you also agree. If you had to go dig in, and Adriaan, I think of between Adriaan and myself, he's got more experience with the DPA stuff than anybody else. But there's some really brilliant gem microphones in the DPA range. But it also comes down to cost at the end of the day. It's an expensive microphone, which brings me to another point. If I could bring it up, I just saw it here, somebody mentioning that we always have a budget issue in this country when it comes to microphones.
Yeah, pulling.
I think that if I could answer that, I think that's just an approach thing. It's the staging companies that handle everything from laying down the first stage deck till the last lighting truss gets safety. I mean, to do that whole thing, if you don't have a specialist sound company looking into these things and you don't focus on a certain genre, I think microphone choice will always fall on the wayside. It's not an important aspect because people don't see a microphone as a tool to make money with. But for us, using it in our daily disciplines to make a living and achieving that next level of professionalism and that next sound is what we aim for. So I think it's a question of companies approaching purchasing microphones differently. I mean, your more corporate-based company might not look into spending money on an earthwork set, because it's not a viable option for them. But for somebody that works and trying to achieve that the sound is their focus, your approach would definitely be different.
Yeah, I think to talk into that, because I often get asked by whether it be our students or guys just wanting some input into what to buy. My first question I ask them back is, what market are you trying to achieve or trying to get into? If you're a company that wants to make money out of renting out gear, you got to look at where you're placed, who's around you, and what kind of events do you want to get into, and then fall in line with that. Because if you go out of your way to go find the next best thing in Europe and buy a bunch of it, bring it down, think it's going to work, maybe in 10 years. But for now, if you want to buy RF in Joburg, you're not going to go wrong buying ULXD, or something in the Shure range, or the Sennheiser range, which is getting stronger and stronger. And if you're going to be buying, if you go to Cape Town, if you want to buy a small format console to travel with and you want backup, you buy a Midas Pro 2. There's just hosts of them down there, so you got to look at your markets. But then I think what Marius said in terms of where companies focused is, if you take a company like multimedia, if you look at your core business model in terms of where you make your money, microphones is not on the list. So take someone like you if you want to buy a pair of mics, you got to really motivate it. And one of the first questions is, how much can we charge for them? And then, so we're buying them for our event, but then what? So I get where Marius is coming from. And I've, me owning my own company, I don't own PA. I'm not going to buy a PA. I'm not going to buy staging. I'm not going to buy lighting. 14 years ago, I wasn't going to buy anything. But anyway, it's a different story. But I focused on infrastructure and microphones. But because we do recordings for a living, from studio to TV to all that, so it's got to look right, it's got to work well. And we do actually have, on our microphones, we do get a fair quantity of business on dry hires and third-party users, because we've got enough to do about 5 big band setups. But that works for me, but not everybody's in that position. So it's a valid point in all directions. And I think it's Puleng that asked that question. Budget, if you have to motivate, if you think about some of the mics we've been speaking about now, if you want to have 10, even 450s, it's not, not going to break the bank, but it's a large chunk of cash to pull out, that you have to make back at some point.
So it comes back to a return on investment and then some. So once the gear is paid off, then you actually get into business of start showing a profit. So if you buy something decent, it's going to service you longer, which means you stand to make a bit more money out of it. So that to me is an easy motivation back to your management. So, it's once they see it that way, then, a mic that's going to last you 20 years is going to make money versus a mic that's built cheaply, going to last you maybe 2 years, and then you have to buy a new one.
Yeah, if you take a studio approach, a guy that's putting up a studio or working in a studio, your thought pattern into buying a mic is a lot more thought out, because you have to multi-purpose it a lot more. You got to be doing, if you can only afford 2 mics, you might, because you're only doing little bits, you don't need 40 mics, you need 2. So you can spend a bit more money on them, but it's got to be the right mics. Peter? Or Marius want to say something?
Yeah, I think from a live side, staging company, a lot of the people approach it as a consumable. So they'll have a look at buying maybe 4 really good microphones. You look at the quantity, but they can get 24 SM58s for the same price. That's the approach, which we sit with 90% of this in South African market. So the few guys out there that do spend the money on the nice microphones because of the quality that you achieve at the end, they only furthers ourselves. I mean, it's a catch-22, and I think that's why. I mean, you guys know a lot of the internationals that we tour with, and you work overseas. There's a little flight case that comes with. It's all personalized stuff. The guys bring their own microphones.
Yep.
We in South Africa just got a very funny way of treating it. You know, it's like Peter said, we all sit in a scenario where we've done bands and you rock up in the middle of Bloemfontein at an arts festival, and you got 457s and 2 caps are broken and they vibrate on the guitar, and that's what we deal with. So it's a personal thing, and the way to approach it is it's a tool. I mean, if you're motivated enough with the powers that be that supplies these things, you can do what Christo just said and motivate, and what Adriaan said is if you look after a microphone, it'll last you for 50 years.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to look after it. And there was a question earlier about what's wrong with the PG56. I can't remember who asked it. Probably nothing, but there's probably nothing good about it either.
I think we've just come to a level where we've surpassed it. I mean, and I hear what you're saying. I mean, I've had some guys raving about the new Samsung drum kit mic set. You know, it's like 7 mics in a set for, you know, $5,500, if not less. You know, and in certain contexts that works well. You know, if you're doing little pub gigs, 2 Eons on sticks, you know, most of your sound is acoustic anyway. You know,
and what has to be said, it's not that it's being discriminated against where it's used for and it works well. You know, that's not a bad thing. If you spend $5,500 and you make money with it, that's good business.
Exactly.
You know, so we have to put things in perspective. Is that it would be awesome to have all these great microphones, but we're all in business to make a living.
Yeah.
So
I do think that also you've got to draw a line between sound reinforcement and studio.
Yes.
If you're running an event company and you're doing tech for an event company, you really have to worry about quantity. You need a lot of shit. You need a lot of microphones, a lot of stands, a lot of cables. You need to run a lot of channels generally. It'll go from podium microphones, but right up, you've got to be prepared to be able to handle big gigs as well. In studio, if you're running a small kind of operation, maybe your focus is on recording, like just recording vocals or doing the odd overdub. I've got a little setup at home where I can do all my overdubs in my room. If I need to do acoustic guitars or electric guitars or vocal overdubs, I can do that at home. If I'm going to track rhythm section, I'll go into a big studio and I'll track rhythm section and organize microphones that I want to use. But at home, this is a question. I have a question that I would like to pose now. Do you want to buy a really, really good microphone and plug it into a very, very average preamp? Do you want to buy like a microphone that's okay and plug it into a really, really hot preamp? What is going to be your order of preference here? There was a question, somebody mentioned something about the Warm Audio,
yes.
Warm 87.
I think it was Gavin.
I bought a Warm 87 because it was in my price range mainly. And I quite like the sound of it. Does it sound like a U87? No, not really. It doesn't sound like a U87. It's a U87 is a 60,000 Rand now, 55,000 Rand microphone. And they are go-to worldwide studio standard go-to microphones for a reason, because they sound like U87s. The Warm 87 is cool. I chat. I'm on a kind of Facebook friends with a guy who has now left Warm, and he runs a company called Signal Art. And Signal Art make replica microphones. And I had a chat with him about the 87 because he designed the 87 for Warm. And what he said made a lot of sense. He said that when they designed it, they made it a little bit more sort of vanilla for a sort of mass appeal, because the 87 actually it's quite a dark sounding microphone, the standard normal U87. It's not really kind of hard and crispy. And people want to hear, they would rather hear things that are slightly on the brighter side, generally, commercially. You listen to pop music, you look at vocal treatments in pop mixes, it's all kind of upper mids and tops and
in your face.
Sound a little bit brighter. So Warm 87, yeah, it's cool. Signal Art have now got they will take your Warm 87 and modify it. And when he's finished with it, it will sound a lot closer to a U87 than when it comes out of Warm Audio. But as what's it now, 8-9 grand? It's great value for money. It's like the Baby 47, I don't know what they call it, the Warm 47. It's like the replica of the FET, the Neumann FET 47, and it comes in about 5.5 grand. And when you're talking that kind of, what you can get for that kind of money, yeah, it's cool. You know, it works. But again, it's getting back to exactly what all three, what Adriaan and Christo and Marius are saying, that it's application, you know. But your thoughts on the microphone preamp story? What do you think?
So I would go preamp priority.
Marius?
It's at this day and age with the digital domain, I'd go mic.
Me too.
You, Peter?
I'm always. I would rather spend a little bit less money, which is what I've kind of done. Is I bought a kind of budget microphone to plug into a really shit-hot preamp. I like my 1073s.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I mean, for me, if you had to equate it, it's like taking your LP and turning it into an MP3 and then listening to it on your cell phone, you know, where...
Yeah, I did a huge amount of recording in M5, the old M5 studios in Auckland Park at SABC, on that old vintage, I think it's a 1081 Neve console. And you could plug any microphone into those Neve preamps and it would actually sound killer. Really, you just plug in a microphone and wave it in the general direction of whatever was going on, and it would sound awesome because of the signal flow of those desks, the pre's and the EQs and the amps that they used on the group outputs. I mean, they were just killer, absolutely awesome. So for me personally, preamp. I'm not saying
but
preamp. I'm not saying preamp and something half decent, but my money would always go towards a really good pre. But then, as a studio guy, I'm talking about capturing a vocal performance, capturing a guitar performance. You know, so if you gets back to the source again. If your source is really good, I want to put it through a good pre. I do.
Yeah. So just to come back to Marius's point, in the live domain, preamps on whether it be your Avid, your Studer, your Digicos, you know, Yamaha, the new PM range, all of those, the amount of R&D that's gone into those preamps is actually phenomenal. And because if you think about it, they've really focused on signal to noise ratio to the nth degree, because once you've got 48, 64 channels, all opening up, all gaining up, you know, you just have a massive summing effect if you've got a little bit of noise. You know, so if you work on a console where that's an issue, you know what I'm talking about. So we spoiled in the sense, like me with my Avid consoles and even the Soundcraft consoles, the preamps are of such high quality that you're going to get pretty much a good result, you know, with the good microphone, and it'll show up your bad microphone. So I get where Marius is coming from, because we are spoiled where, you know, I've done projects for guys using my Avid console, and then they come back and they go, what preamps were you running on the recording mics? And I said, no, well, that was just my preamps on the console. They go, what? You know, it sounds better than my stuff in the studio. And we are spoiled in that sense, where it's the high-end consoles that we're working with. I mean, Adriaan's on the SD10s, Marius is on studio consoles, I'm on the Avid consoles, you know, and it is a spoil. And it does show up your quality of microphones. There was a question I wanted to throw at Adriaan from Ponzo, talking about experience with lapels versus Countryman's. So obviously lapel mics versus headsets.
So tying in with the DPA mention, for me, the DPAs definitely do have the upper hand in terms of quality, in terms of, headset mics. It just depends on earrings. If there's big looping earrings and it's a bottom of the ear boom, then you're going to get that clang, clang, clang. So that's, if you have the option of maybe a Countryman that goes over the ear, then that could work. But I think the DPA guys have definitely got the firm hold on quality there. But now the discussion between having a headset mic for great separation and gain before feedback versus a lapel mic that's stuck somewhere in the shoulder area. I think the situation we're all in now, going forward, personal hygiene and close proximity to other people is going to become a thing. So we'll definitely see more people going for lapel mics. So
Interesting point.
It's going to be a new playing field for us.
That's a very
but I've been on stages where all the panelists were all mic'd up with lapel mics. And if you take the time and you have got a say in what the PA sounds like, then you can get great quality out of a lapel mic, 184s, for that case, even for recording. So if you take the time to plan your gig properly in such a way, then you can get away with good sounding lapels in a live room.
I think, my biggest sort of bugbear when it comes to headsets is, and I sort of throw this out at a bunch of techies out there that number one, don't understand the cost that a company spends on, 10 DPA or MX Sures or Countryman's, and you look at the state of those mics. They're not kept well. Never mind the hygiene side; they're bent out of shape and they don't know how to use them. And then you get this really mangled up piece of candy floss that you want to put on a CEO of Vodacom. It just doesn't look great. And then it's on camera. It's just a whole bunch of things. I'd rather give me a lapel mic and I'll work with it than work with those kind of things. So
we've got a lot of failure rates as well.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, headsets failure rates is huge.
Because quite often the speaker would come up the stage and they would yank the cable and just do that.
Yeah, it's still on the ears and they yank it out the back here, so it just bends off and there you go. But I mean, I can understand a non-educated speaker doing that, but if you watch how some of the crew handles it, I want to cringe sometimes backstage when I see how they handle in-ears and those kind of little mics, and they just chuck them around. They're lying on tables and boxes on them, and anyway. But I think his question was one versus the other one. My comment is there depending on the context. If you're doing broadcast stuff, almost always a lapel is preferable because it looks cleaner.
Yeah.
But you're also in a situation often where there's no amplification, there's no monitoring happening, so you don't have a problem. Getting close to the source of the headset solves a lot of problems live, which don't always exist. A lot of the times when we put up decent PAs and the way the sets are designed, you don't have to go with a headset. You can actually work with the lapel mic even in the live environment. That would be a last resort in certain scenarios. Question here for Peter. Your opinion on virtual microphone systems, like from Slate Digital.
I'm presuming I haven't really had any experience with virtual microphone. I'm presuming this is plug-in simulation.
Yes.
Who are the guys who made the original auto-tune? Antares had a plug-in called Mic Modeler, where it would ask you for your source microphone, and then on the other side of the table, it would ask you what microphone you wanted to turn it into. And you could say, well, my source microphone is an SM58, and I want to turn it into a
U87.
Pull the other one on. It's got bells on it, really. It's emulation. So I don't really have an opinion. I think just do what you can to get the best possible representation of the source with what you have.
Yeah.
That is always the first prize. There's different, obviously, one approaches different live shows according to the requirements, according to the performance requirements. It's the same thing when you're making recording albums. It's done according to the requirements. The treatment is different. The approach is different. My main goal when recording acoustic jazz records, and I did a few of them, was to try and record flat and mix flat. That was the goal. It didn't always happen. There'd be a little bit of sweetening here and there, but most of the time I could generally spend a day setting up with the band, start tracking in the evening, because I've had a really long time to position exactly what I want, where I want, the right microphones, it's beautiful recording spaces, and you record flat, because that's the best representation of what was going on in the room, and then bring it up on the desk and it sounds great. So you don't really need to do anything to it. I do think there's a problem with over-processing these days. You pick on your plugin page and suddenly you've got a zillion compressors and a zillion EQs, and everybody feels they need to stream 10 equalizers and 10 compressors on a channel. Well, again, goes back to checking out the source. Look at the source, capture it properly.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't need to do that amount of processing. Sorry, again, long-winded in terms of virtual microphone. I think it's toys, you know, toys for boys. It's not going to make a 58 really sound like you recorded it with a U47. It's going to change it. But who knows? So who knows what a U47 sounds like anyway now? You know?
True.
That's what.
I was going to say that earlier when you talked about, you know, it doesn't sound like a U87. Not many people know what a U87 actually sounds like, or has actually seen a U87.
Plugin manufacturers throw these things at them and they say, yeah, this plugin is like $399 and it's modeled on X Factor vacuum tube, this and this circuitry. We've used some of the boxes, you know, Marius, my studio experience. I know if somebody says a Pultec, the 2A EQ, I know what the boxes sound like because I used them. But nobody really actually, outside of a very, very select few people who remember them, and it has a lot to do with the oncoming dotage and decomposition, certainly in my case. I'm old, I've been around, so I know what they sound like. I know what LA4s and LA2s, Teltronics, I know all of that shit. I know what they do. But don't try and tell me that I'm going to spend $399 on a plugin because we're emulating this. Who gives a shit what you're emulating? Does it sound cool? If it sounds cool, yeah. But
yeah,
on an SSL, who's going to sit behind a 96-channel SSL? Just, you know, it's an EQ. It has a job. That's it. It's a compressor. It controls dynamics. Who cares what it's modeled on? It doesn't matter anymore because nobody's going to sit behind these consoles. No one's going to sit behind a Focusrite 106-channel desk. No, it's gone.
Yeah, it's left the country.
I'm so annoyed about that. It's gone. So we're not going to sit behind it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know what it's going to sound like. So there's no degree of comparison. If it works for you, brilliant. If it sounds cool, you think it's lekker, go for it. Use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, but again, it gets back to that first comment, source.
Yeah, exactly.
Just get it right.
No, I love it. I think you need to get a bit more animated. We don't know what you're talking about.
Another drink.
Hey, I'll give you time to catch your breath. Marius, I'm going to ask you this one. Ruben's asking, you know, in your opinion, what's the best preamps at the moment on a live console, on a digital console? You've worked on a fair share of yours. I think I have. Adriaan has. We all have had numerous opportunities. I think, you know, if we go back, if we look at the first digital consoles that came out, you know, late 90s, early 2000s compared to now, it's night and day. But how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I wouldn't put a timeline to that question because it's just for what we had 10 years ago to now, there's just no comparison. All the top Macs, I mean, if you look, really nice, sweet sounding preamps is Midas on the Pro. It's really nice. Digico stuff's phenomenal. I love Studer, but I think everybody in the world loves Studer. I mean, you can't knock a Studer's preamp, but that's what 70 years of refining studio technology that they've given to us in a live environment. Avid's brilliant. The new Avid, I mean, I wasn't a big profile fan, but everybody knows that. It was just the little mushrooms made me nervous.
Made you nervous.
Now they got rid of the little mushrooms and they changed the whole setup. And in my opinion, that is one of the best sounding consoles I've ever mixed on. In the sense of looking at a Starlight Classics, walking in and having a choice of going to sit down, having a cup of coffee, or swallowing 6 menorah blades. That thing is gone now. It's just given you the confidence. So you coming back, like we all said, and Peter just mentioned again now, the source. Because we also used to, you got all these things, you got a big gig coming up and you got these things in your head running around. What am I going to do when this happens? What am I going to do if that happens? Now you got a good microphone, good preamp, no matter what console you put out there, it's supposed to be good. There's certain things that, it takes a little bit more work. I'm not going to mention brands or anything, but the majority of the mainline consoles these days, the front of house consoles, monitor consoles, all the digital consoles sound pretty good.
Yeah.
You can't really fault them, and as long as you got a good source and the right microphone and it's placed in the right position, then it's you got a game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I want to go back to Simon's comment here, which is, now I'm going to leave this one to Adriaan. Adriaan, you take that one.
Yeah, so it's pretty much the chicken and egg situation, because which drives what? Does the demand of the local bands dictate to the staging companies what to buy, or are the tech riders based on what they get given by the staging companies? So what is held in stock by most companies is what's been pushed into the market. So yes, we are very limited in what is available worldwide and what's in circulation
In this
amongst
country,
most of the rental companies, which is a shame, because very reputable brands like he's mentioned don't get time to shine, and it's purely just because they weren't as well represented in the last 15, 20 years as what Shure is, or any of the other bigger brands. And special mention of Audio-Technica. Homage used to own a rack of Audio-Technicas, and every gig I did with that rack, it sounded amazing. Every time I was amazed by how great those handhelds sounded. And those were the only times I ever used Audio-Technica's RF microphones. So yeah, it is a big shame that we're not using different lesser known brands in terms of that.
Yeah, I was going to make a comment. I mean, I remember my first radio mics that I saw and experienced in use, and now we're going back, very far away, decades ago, were the Audio-Technicas. Really good quality microphones. And then, over time, depending, and I think your comment there about representation, as well as chicken and egg, first come, first serve. Our market is so small, once it's established with something, it's very difficult to penetrate. And it's not a reflection on quality. It's not a reflection on whether I like it or not. As a company owner, and I made this comment earlier, if I wanted to, I can't buy 60 RF mics. I might need them at some point. So I buy limited for our normal gigs, but I make sure that I buy something that I can complement from other companies in the area. It's a good business sense thing. So it is, and it's not just me. Other people think the same way. Other people do the same thing. So it's a tricky one, that, and I feel for them. But I mean, I've used AKG, I've used Audio-Technica, I've used. I was looking quite hectically and at the Audex RF mics the other day. I had a long conversation with the guys on what is the range, what's in the range, where's their pricing at, all that, what features they offer, and I had to listen to them, and they're really good microphones. But no, I don't own any yet. I'm gonna say yet, save my own backside there. So just trying to read the other comments here. I don't know if you've got any comment on that. Comment from Simon, Marius.
Well, it's coming back. Is he just talking radio mics? Let me just clear that up first. He's just talking about RF.
RF, yeah.
No,
Well,
I think
I think
it's a broader statement.
he's specifically
Yeah,
using RF because I think it's the most emphasized in RF.
Working all over the world and looking at other brands, it's actually so unknown here. I mean, there's microphones that I work with in Germany called Kraft, which was I've never heard of it, and there's very little, you can go Google it, there's a very little write-ups on it, but it's a little niche thing that, guys, let's develop a microphone for something specific that they want to use. And it was on a small T-piece, and it was used for backing vocals. Looked like the AKG C430s. Little 4 centimeter little pencil microphones, but they sounded phenomenal. So that was something that was developed for somebody. But when you look at the market and where we are situated in the world market, I think we're doing pretty well with what we got. Unfortunately, it's all about brand, the brand being driven by suppliers and importers, because the market is so small. So if you flood it with one thing, that's what people get used to. And to dump that and replace it with something else, it's a mission. It's like any PA manufacturer try to break into the country. And we had that firsthand with Alcons. What a phenomenal sounding PA, and it worked. It's a brilliant sounding PA, but it never took off because it took the flack from the normal stuff that was being punted on in the market by the bigger suppliers. So it's all. I mean, I still think as a sound guy, we can sit and chat about microphone choices for days. It'll always be different from person to person because it's based on experience. But if you really push yourself into a direction, you will get the microphone that works for you. You'll find a niche that works for you. You'll find a combination of microphones that'll work for you. And then you'll build on top of that. Somebody mentioned earlier on one of the things that the E60, is it the 902?
Yeah, E902, the Sennheiser.
Christo, didn't we use that at the Dome now?
Yes, I asked for it on the kick.
Yeah, and I mean, I was from a previous experience with that microphone, I wasn't happy. Now this time it worked. It worked well. So it was also a combination of the console and the PA was set up correctly and where the drum kit was. And out of the norm, I just was one microphone on the kick drum and it worked for me. So it's just, you'll find something that works for you. And if you're really so finicky about what you want to achieve at the end of the day as an engineer, being studio live, you'll pursue that thing. And you get the guys out there that'll go and buy whatever mics you want. You know, you just bite the bullet and you invest in those microphones because they'll last you forever. But, you know, you get your signature sound, the sound that you mix on with the tools that you use. And the only one the way you determine what you like is by using multiple brands. There's so many good microphones out there. I mean, I'm sure if Peter could afford it, I mean, you just slap 100 million shoops on everything. Because that's I just can't afford it.
I think a comment I wanted to throw in quickly, just if I can get 2 cents. We spoke earlier about a 112 or a Beta 52 or a D6 or a 902 now that Marius mentioned it. And I think a critical thing to remember there, you can't take the one and just use them all the same and see which ones sounds the best. They all actually have a little bit unique in terms of how you need to approach them to a source. Like a 52 and a 902 on the same source in the same position will sound different and the one will win. But then you take the 902 and you just move it slightly, get a slightly different perspective, and it sounds amazing. You know, and this is where, and Marius said this right in the beginning, you need to learn your gear. You know, okay, dis nie baie goeie Afrikaans daai nie. You need to learn as much about you need to know your gear. You know, and it's a two-way street. You know, I don't like a 52 on a kick drum. I love it on brass, like a trombone.
Good tuba mic. Good tuba
There we
mic.
go. Trombone, deep brass instruments, phenomenal. You know, if I walk up to a festival and there's a 91 and a 52, I'll mute the 52 and make do with the one. That's just the way I work because I know what I'm going to get out of it. But having said that, for other people, and like Marius said it, you know your combination and what you need to tweak to get that relationship working. Same thing, I think it was Peter that mentioned a 112. You know, so there's so many different opinions, but it's all based on a perspective and an approach. That's why if someone asks you, like, what's your favorite kick mic, and you say 91-112, they can't just go and do it and it'll work. If they observe how you do it and ask you questions about why. And I think that's something that a lot of youngsters can learn, is if they watch me, either miking up a snare or doing whatever I'm doing on a brass or wherever, piano, you have to ask, what's the mindset behind that? Why that? And then in the explanation will be the situation, the context, the source, the genre. All these different things will come out, and on like a drum kit. I had a question the other night which came up after our stream. How would you mic a drum kit without a hole? And then the question is asked in a way where, well, I don't know what to do now. There's no hole in it. And if you think about it, why is there a hole in it? Does a kick without a hole mean it doesn't work? There's no sound going to come out of it. There's different, but if but you give a classic jazz guy, 20-inch kick with a hole in it, and he doesn't want it. That doesn't shoot that genre of music, and you still have to know how to approach it. A 52, believe it or not, on the holeless kick works well. So, and again, it's just placement, but then the tuning is very important between the two vellums and stuff like that. So it's all about the approach and the perspective. That's my 2 cents. There's a question here. I think I'll throw this one back at Peter, your endless wisdom from Telenay. How does a different preamps respond to different microphones? That's a 6-hour conversation, but give us the 2-minute version.
Wow. I suppose the absolute shortest answer would be, you can take 5 different microphones and plug it into the same preamp, and all 5 microphones will sound different. And you can take 1 microphone and you can plug it into 5 different preamps, and that 1 microphone will sound different 5 times. So it's a question of matching. And when you start talking about preamps, different preamps have different characteristics, and it really is just, it's how they're built and the components that are used, and do they have a valve front end or back end or both, or is it FET circuitry, or is it straight solid state, or have they got transformer balanced inputs or not? Because all of these little things make a difference in terms of the coloration. You get very, very clean preamps that a lot of people like. I think API would be in that category. They're solid state preamps. They're quite clean sounding, so very, very transparent. Whereas some of the older, the sort of Neve preamps, they have a different color. They color the sound. So it depends on again, it's a personal preference. I like stuff that has personality. It's
also a combination. You might.
It's a combination of the mic and the preamp. It's very, very important. Again, Adriaan mentioned chicken and egg. There's a lot of this chicken and egg going on in so many areas in terms of what we do. It's plug and play. You have to experiment. If you're doing a vocal, don't pull out 1 microphone, pull out 5 and plug them in and see what they sound like, because that's the only way you're going to really know how things sound and what is going to start working for you. If you have, the access to different preamps is also becoming quite a luxury. Back in studio days, we were working on huge, large format analog consoles, but we also had external preamps. There were external Neve preamps, external Manley preamps, various things that you could use to change. How often did I use external preamps when I was running big SSL consoles? Honestly, I didn't really. I was really happy with plugging a whole bunch of microphones into a large big SSL or a big Focusrite or a Harrison. But now with the bouquet availability of all the different kind of bouquet preamps, there's some really, really great stuff out there. How we get to preview it and listen to it gets back again, touches on what Adriaan was talking about in terms of what is available. Are people going to bring these things? Will the guys who sell them, who represent them, will they bring them so that we can have a listen? There's a couple of guys who are very good in terms of that, who do service companies and studios and say, we've got new product. Will you have a listen to this? Will you have a listen to that? I'm going off track here in terms of the original question. Sorry, Tavan. It's I can't answer this in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, other than to say different preamps sound different. They do. Find a microphone that works with a preamp. It's personal, you know. I've got combinations. I've got mics that I really like going into certain pre's. I've got 3 or 4 different preamps at home that I will match different microphones because I know the way they're going to work. I know the microphone with that voice through that preamp is going to work. That microphone, same microphone with a different voice, might go through a different preamp because of the tone of the voice. So what does that get back to? Source.
Yeah. So the question is, does the different preamps respond different to microphones? Yes.
Well, absolutely they do. Sorry.
Yeah. No. It's just interesting that like it's as simple as a yes or no question, but you can't just say it. You have to explain it so that people can benefit from the scenario. So there's a question here from Selby that's come up more than once. I saw it just now and I forgot about it. Sorry. Your opinion on the SKM 5200 and then 5900 from Sennheiser. I don't know about anybody else. I just recently bought a pair of the 5900s with the Neumann capsules, but I bought it on the 3000 series receiver so I can get the command button working. Great sounding system, really great sounding system. Sennheiser's new range of RF, they've really, the G4s, for example, on IEMs sound amazing. They really upped their game in terms of audio quality, RF, interaction, everything. So I like it.
Oh, look, I think it's important just to note here that Sennheiser has always been great microphones. Their RF has always been great. It's just they weren't as well represented and supported as Shure. And that's the crux of the matter. Why we've got more Shure than Sennheiser in the country.
Yeah. But I mean, but having said that, even if I've used a lot of G3s and so in the Sennheiser range, the step up from the G3 series to the G4 is phenomenal. So I'm not comparing it to any other product. I'm just saying within that range.
Sure. Yeah.
My first choice IEM system would now be a G4 system if I had to buy, if I had the money to buy.
Adriaan's correct in the way of approach of manufacturers as well, Christo, if I can butt in there. It's like, you look at Sennheiser, they'll bring out a range, which everybody will jump on the bandwagon and use, where a lot of the other manufacturers will have a premium range and a mid-level range and a cheap range to cover everybody. And that's the market that we live in. We get the guys going to buy the expensive stuff, and you're going to get the guys to buy the real cheap stuff. And that's what the market gets exposed to constantly. So, I mean, I'm also from a multi-system RF setup. I think Sennheiser has got a lot on everybody else when it comes to RF. They really dialed that in to a T. But then again, you and I and Adriaan, we've got away with 160 systems on a stage. Sure. I mean, that shouldn't be done. It's illegal in some countries, but we did it.
Yeah.
It's just, it's flooding the market. I agree with you said. I just wish there was a different, I mean, if you had to go to Europe now, Adriaan, like you've worked in all over the place, you go and you walk in there is choice of anything you want. I don't think we'll ever get there from a price point of view, affordability, and what we do in this country and what we achieve with what we've got. I mean, there's some major players out there with microphones, investment in microphones. I've made a serious investment in microphones over the years. Lots of money, but it's paid off in the end. And I think from a microphone preference point of view, everybody will just eventually find their niche and not worry about what the guy from the PA company is going to give him. Not honoring his right. He'll come there with his own little suitcase with his toys in it and make it happen. I think that's the dream we all look towards.
Gavin made a statement here saying you guys don't have much love for ribbon mics. I think, in a live context, we don't. There's not many options in the live scenario. I think in studio there's a lot more. I think, Peter, you've got some options there. I don't mind a ribbon mic, they do, but they are a little bit fragile for a general use throw around touring market. That was a question.
The only time I come across them live, sorry, Krista, was at Rosie's, which is the acoustic platform at Cape Town International Jazz Festival. There's the Rosie's room where they have all of the kind of doyens of acoustic jazz, and it's all done by Easterns, and they throw up quite a few ribbon microphones in that scenario because it's fitting for the purpose. We have a couple of ribbons for studio, and they're great for certain things, absolutely. But would I have one ribbon over something else as a be all and end all go to microphone? Probably not.
Okay, that answers that one. Sorry, Gavin. I don't think we've got much. Simon mentioned the M88. I think that is a phenomenal microphone. I agree with him on that one. That is a very nice mic. I don't own one. I'd love to own one. So wireless mic versus cable mic. Cable mic always wins. You just eliminate. You eliminate a whole process of HG conversion, RF conversion.
No batteries.
No batteries. Nothing like that. The only reason we use wireless mics is for client satisfaction. It tidies up. It loosens up. Quality-wise, you can't beat the cable.
Yeah.
I think there's no... Although, having said that, if you want to represent a cabled microphone well, then, you go for your high-end RF systems in whichever brand. Because obviously the conversions and the transmission and the quality from transmitter to receiver is maintained better, but it's not 100%. Having said that, 2 rand a meter China Mall cable, not the best option. Let's just put it there. Yeah.
Well, there's also the security issue with radio microphones. Sure, you get some microphones that are encrypted, but I can pull out my Win Radio RF scanner and I can monitor and listen to something that I should probably not be listening to. So, there is a place for RF, but I think it's been inflated beyond its use.
Amen.
If I had a choice, I wouldn't see any RF on a show except for in-ears, possibly. But there is really no major need for everyone to be on RF.
Yeah.
On most of the shows we do, and I'm not talking about the specific shows where it's televised and there's lots of artists moving on and off. I think it's almost overdone.
Yeah.
We can get away with a lot less RF than we actually do.
Yeah. Simon says we use wireless mics to keep MJ employed. But I think if you look, even when we did The Voice and we had, who was our artist that came with his Telefunken, the last minute? I struck a blank now. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And it wasn't even a discussion. Yeah. Ben Harper.
Ben Harper.
Yeah, he came in and on his Telefunken wired mic, it's not even a discussion. No ears and wired mic. And it sounded great. And production didn't go, they didn't have a choice. It worked. And we made it work. Simon had to do wedges for a change instead of in-ears, and he made that work. But yeah. There's a question here from Jason Mandel with podcasting and streaming. Podcasting and streaming, obviously, microphones, it's very much due to what you're talking on. The MV mics that we're giving away on the stream, the Shure mics, they make some really good device microphones. So you're talking about your either Samsung or Shures or all that. The MV88 that I've been using for a couple of the streams that I've been doing, it really, really, really works well. So again, it comes down to price.
We picked up some of the Rode podcast mics for Cape Town, and they were so great. They were
Yeah.
very cool.
That's the thing. It's about buying a mic that has been designed for the purpose. You know, in my case, yeah, I want to look cool, so I've got a mic, but that means I have a mixer over there and I've got an interface over here. You know, it's not just, I can't just stick this straight into my machine, you know. Whereas when I was doing the same show in the same chair with the MV88, I had it on a stand in front of me and I spoke. You know, it's a meter away from me. Sounded great, worked great in that environment. It's got a headphone out on it so you can listen to yourself if you want to. But it's, and talking about MV mics, Johan sent me the winner for our MV51 microphone. Guess who it is? And we all know this gentleman, Mr. Paul Smith, if you're watching. So we've been running the competition. We all know Paul Smith, don't we?
Congrats, Paul.
Yeah. So Paul's been, he's actually tagged on our Facebook as a, what's it again? So a super fan or something like that. I don't know what it is. Johan will remind me. So congratulations, Paul. We'll make contact with you and get that microphone through to you. And we hope to see you on air doing some podcasts. I think we've been going for an hour and 45 minutes. I'd like some closing statements from everybody, just some food for thought, if anything like that. Let's close with this one. I had a note here. Facepalm moments. Talking about microphones. I think it's a generous one. Facepalm moments, just to explain that. When you walk onto a situation and you see someone's done something, it's almost like unbelievable. Who wants to start off with that one?
Well, I've got a great one. I'll start. It's not really a microphone thing. I got booked to mix a band. It wasn't a band that I do regularly, but I got booked to go and do a front of house mix at a race course in Maritzburg. There was some big race meeting and there was kind of horse races and then entertainment. And I was in touch with band management in terms of who was playing, and I put together a tech rider, sent the tech rider down to the PA company, and the guy said, we're running an analog rig. And I said, that's fantastic. Very happy with that. And he told me what desk it was. It was one of the big Allen and Heath. From what I remember, it was quite a while ago, and all the compressors and reverb units and a delay line. And it was, that's great. I can work with that. So we arrive at the venue and I go to front of the house and I have a look at the desk and everything's on and I've got my racks. And the guy says, all there, all good. And I said, absolutely fantastic. Where are your insert mults? And he goes, sorry? I said, where are your insert mults so that I can connect the racks of gear to the desk? He said, oh, no, I don't have any of those. So I was digging around in my bag. I had a couple of turnarounds that not enough, but I had a couple of turnarounds, and with some creative wiring, I managed to get like a reverb working and one compressor for the vocal, but it was, that was my facepalm moment. Lots of racks of beautiful gear, but not one insert mult in sight.
No connection. That's funny. Adriaan? You had your hand up?
It's a self-inflicted facepalm moment. I've never had the greatest of memories. So a gig that I did many moons ago, I rocked up, and I left the drum kit carry case microphones at the warehouse. So the only mics that made it to the site were those tiny little AKG CK418s, 419s.
Oh, yeah.
And that had to go in the whole drum kit, including the kick drum. So that was my own moment.
Yeah. Adriaan? Marius? You probably don't have one.
There's many. I think, Adriaan, the one, I always think about these little things that happen on gigs. I wouldn't call it a facepalm moment or whatever, but I think Adriaan was with me on Samas one year when there was a revolve involved in the Super Bowl. And we had a crew member that was feeding the multi-core through a hole while this revolve with the drum kit and the percussion spun, I think it was at 270 degrees. It didn't go to 360, but this guy decided to go for a smoke break in rehearsals. And this nobody was feeding this cable, and I was at front of house. I don't know if Adriaan was with me, but I mean, it's the weirdest thing ever when the band's busy playing and one for one, your mics just disappear with no noise. It's like somebody switches them off. And it was probably a good half an hour later before we actually knew what was going on. And there was a 16-core multi-core wrapped around a steel rod and just ripping off one mic after the other. That was kind of amusing. I don't know why I just thought of that. Remember that day? I don't know.
Was that at Sun City?
It was Sun City, yeah.
Yeah, Sun City is famous for cable abuse.
Yeah.
Me and Marius mentioned one the other day with a forklift and cables. Yeah, I mean, from my side, Faithful Moments, something similar to Adriaan. You know, in my younger days, in my exuberance of doing everything by myself, when I, borrow my mom's car and off I go. This was actually my dad's car in this point. It was, we're now talking 1992 somewhere. I went all the way out to Lenasia in a community hall to a little jazz gig. And only when I got there, I realized I didn't have one mic lead. I mean, I'm very far away from everything because I'm setting up on myself, doing everything in structures, and you realize I had everything except mic cables, which is slightly important on a gig like this. So fortunately, being in my nature, and those who worked with, I'm always early. My staff will attend to that, and I always give, and that's probably why I'm such a stickler for it today, that, if the call time's X, we shift forward and our call time is a different point. I had enough time to drive back to Joburg, get the cables, and drive back. Go finish my setup in haste. But yeah, it's always interesting to and I think, Facepalm Moments is not always about watching other guys doing stupid things. It's about realizing it yourself. And doing and learning from your own mistakes. Please explain your Genelec setup. Simon's asking you a question. That's the answer, Simon.
No, so I'm busy with more headphone projects. So I use this Genelecs just as a reference, but then I jump between all the different headphones because I'm busy working on a project with using Clang. So there are some bits of the project that I still need to use reference monitors, and they look a bit weird on screen because I'm not sitting straight head on to because my space is a bit limited, so that's why they look a bit squiff and askewed.
Yeah, I could notice your left is a little bit about 4-7 degrees out there. You need to fix that.
That one,
yeah. Jabulo just made a comment about Peter, as you travel around, if I read this correctly, just always assisting and helping and complimenting and training and that kind of stuff. Keep it up. I think it's in our nature. I think I do it as well. When you travel around, it's not about I'm better than you. It's just sharing knowledge. That's why I run the show. We just talk and share and answer questions and give guys as much opportunity to learn as possible. Any closing comments?
I want to make a comment on where Peter was talking about the matching of head amps with preamps with microphones. I think it comes back to doing some homework. It's always important to, before you get anywhere, do some homework and set up, things in a way that is familiar for you so that you can just do more efficient work. It's not just about reading reviews online and taking someone else's word at face value, but actually putting it to use and run a signal path through something to actually listen to it and then decide for yourself what works for your, working environment and your personal taste. So, reading reviews is cool, but it doesn't, you need to experience it yourself and make it your own. That's just advice for anyone else out there.
Yeah. My thing is, if you work with bands, they come to an event and we do a line check before they get there. When they get there, we do a sound check. And I think one of all of our pet peeves is when the sound check turns into a band rehearsal. You know, and we expect them to know the stuff when they get there. And the same thing with us. When the band is there, when the artist is there, that's not our time to play. You know, that's what Adriaan said. We need to play beforehand so we know how to approach it when we get into context. Marius?
Thanks.
Yeah, there's also, and if you've got the facility and the ability at gigs to start playing around, I mean, there's nothing wrong with phoning a manufacturer or a distributor of a product in South Africa. Say, listen, I've read about this microphone. Can you give me one? I want to try it. If they say no, it's their loss. Dude. That's the way I see it. It's always been their loss. It'll always stay their loss. Like I've done it before. I do it with Revel all the time because he's such a sticky old man. That I would run, instead of two microphones on a kick drum, we'd run three, you know, because he's got this certain preference that he wants, you know. That's the accommodating thing. And you also learn a lot from other people by seeing what people do. But I agree 100% with what Adriaan said. Is you cannot go by reading reviews of what all the other people say. It's a personal thing. I mean, 20 guys might like something so much that they all jump at it, but you try something else and it works for you. It's an individual thing. It's like a lot of people don't always agree with the way we do things, and you do things in your personal capacity. But at the end of the day, if you got a goal in your mind that you want to achieve as an engineer, the way you want to mix, the sound you want to get, the only person that can get that sound is you. It's not listening to other people. You got to be yourself and play around with product, man. There's so much. It's like I see, we could use microphones that's not designed for a certain thing and used exactly for something else, and it works. It's all a personal preference thing.
Yeah. So last question I would ask then, you know, based on everything we've said, you know, we always talk about lifelong learning, and I think in our industry, being in the industry for as long as we have, you know, if we look at where we started, and I say we, you know, I'm much younger than all of you. So when we started to now, technology has changed, it's adapted. And, you know, I don't sit thinking now, oh, how am I going to do this now? I don't know anything anymore. We learn and we adapt as technology adapts. And you sort of, it's like that frog in boiling water. You don't realize what's happening because you're growing with it. So the key there is don't get out of the water. You know, don't, if you're in studio and you're in your little zone, you're doing yourself an injustice if you're not studying and looking around and checking what other guys are doing. If you're working at a company and you don't try and expose yourself to other gear or study and look at what other stuff is doing, you can get left behind. You know, I've seen guys that have worked at a company, or whatever company, for a long time, and then they go freelance, or they want to go freelance, or they go and work somewhere else, and it takes them a while to get used to the technologies that someone else is using because they've not grown past what they were involved with. You know, so it's the learning thing doesn't stop. I mean, for myself, I'm always watching YouTube videos and trying new stuff. And like Marius says, trying new gear, trying old gear, trying to improve myself in multiple different ways. I often set up my console at the office just for myself. You know, I know my stuff, but when I say I know my stuff, and I can walk up and do a thing on my gear quickly now, but I still set it up, put a thing on that I've recorded, and I try other stuff. I try and develop my skill set even more to make myself more relevant, as well as, you know, speeding up workflows, all that kind of stuff. So I think if anybody's out there, you know, so important to keep learning, you know, keep teaching yourself new things, and don't be closed off to other people. You know, like Marius now said, everybody's got opinions about everything. And even tonight, you're listening to what we now said. I mean, we were full of opinions, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. You know, there's no right or wrong answer to any of the questions that were asked tonight, in the sense where what we've said is the rule. If anything, take it, make it one of your experiments. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, you know, share your experiences. But keep growing. I see we got a comment here from Concord. Oh, thanks, Concord. Love you.
Just to add on to what Krista is saying, the thing of self, self-motivated learning is very important. So keep on learning, find something that works for you, but also be open to someone else's experiences. You might learn something new. Like when someone, the first time I heard about M88, I thought, what are you smoking? That little thing? What you going to do with that? But then when I heard it, it spoke for itself. So be open to suggestions.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. And this is not something just, that you do for a while. This is something, that you do for the rest of your life. I often say to the students, when you walk into a room, ask yourself 2 questions, Would I mix it like this? Chances are, no. 99.999%. No, you won't. Does that mean it's wrong? No. You open your mind and you listen, and you will walk away with something from it, and you'll enjoy the experience more. But if you walk and you go, oh, the kick sounds awful, you just start criticizing off the bat, you actually close yourself off to a whole experience. That's just being narrow-minded and closed-minded. That's my opinion. So just keep learning. I've learned stuff from students. I teach guys, and I walk up and the guy's done something completely by accident, and I go, ooh, that's cool. And I go and I look at it and ask a question, and then I like, that's very cool. Then I explain to him, and he doesn't know what he's done. I had this specific thing once with the snare drum, and I asked a question, and the guy's like, you can see by his eyes, he had no clue what I was even asking. So I pointed it out, and I've applied what I've seen him do there a couple of times, and it works. And when I travel around, I don't always know all the gear that I get exposed to. I mean, consoles change so much these days. I get to with an artist somewhere, and they're like, I don't know this console. There's a guy babysitting the console. I stand back and say, listen, I want X, Y, Z, do this, this, this. And then I watch and I learn and I let him operate, and then I'll jump in and I'll start mixing. But I'm not scared to ask for questions. You can do yourself a lot of damage by thinking, pretend you know everything and just push your way in. So keep learning, guys. I think that's it from me. We've hit our 2-hour mark. Sorry about that.
There was a very interesting comment, Christo.
Which one?
I can't remember who it was now. So where do we envisage this industry going from? It was Gomalelo Madumo. Asking, where do we see this industry in 10 to 15 years? I believe we're going to get invaded by aliens, and we're going to go back to the times of Julius Caesar, where you can speak to 2 million people without a microphone. That's where we go.
There we go. No, you're not allowed to. COVID-19 lockdown. You can't speak to 2 million people.
Thanks, guys. It was fun, man.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you, guys. Thank you for making your time available. I really appreciate it. I might use your number again at some point.
It's good to see you, Mr. Pearlson. Good to see you.
It has been absolutely wonderful to have got the call and be involved in this. It's awesome to see everybody, because especially now, I don't think I've seen anyone apart from my family for 55 days, 56 days.
Without a mask on.
But yeah, Christo, thank you so much, man. I think it's a really valuable platform. It's wonderful to have an opportunity to share always, and I think it's very selfless of everybody, all you guys, I think it's important. For me, it's always first prize, especially, in terms of what we do, gigs and recordings and albums and shows. And the worst thing is to walk into a show and it's not right. So if I can be instrumental in contributing 1% to somebody to make it more right, so that we can also just go in and think, oh, this is fantastic. This sounds awesome. This record sounds brilliant. This mix is really good. That's cool. That's a cool thing. Mm. So yeah, great platform. Awesome company. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, if you need me, I'll be at home.
Send us your location. We'll send food.
Yes.
Awesome, guys. And thank you guys for watching. Thank you for all the comments and the questions. I really appreciate everybody's involvement. And yeah, I'm on every Tuesday and Thursday evening at 8:00. We keep trying to keep it fresh, get different people involved. So keep watching, send your comments, subject matter, even if you want us to cover something specific. Next week we're gonna talk church a little bit from a technical perspective. And then tomorrow morning, 11:00, if you're interested in watching us make fools of ourselves, I've got Marlon Green in our music room there on the nice Master Series Pearl drum kit, and we're going to keep talking about microphones. I've got quite a variety of mics set up there. We're running it through the Avid console. Going to be streaming that out to you guys and do some virtual sound check and do some mic placement, practical stuff as best as we can. We've got about 7 cameras up, so we'll try and capture that. So join us for that. Other than that, thank you for watching.